Let's get more reaction on this now, and I'm joined by Dr Sithembiso Bhengu, who's the director of the Hani Institute. Dr. Bhengu, thank you so much for your time. Let's just start off, I suppose, with reaction just with this, because one could say that it's a sound decision in some ways, but it fails a massive sensitivity test. Would you agree with that?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. It is indeed a massive decision, a decision that in many ways leaves lingering bad taste, firstly, obviously, on the family of Chris Hani and on the South African Communist Party, and all of those people that are freedom-loving, that loved the example that Chris Hani represented. Yes, I would agree.
If the family then is asking for this inquest then into the assassination, I would assume that it's a move that the Institute then supports. Am I correct?
Indeed. We do support the call both by the family and the Communist Party for an inquest into the assassination of Chris Hani, primarily also obviously based on the fact that both the people convicted for the killing of Chris Hani never had anything to disclose, and despite numerous opportunities to do so, as we are all aware, there was never any disclosure of what was the actual much broader scheme, who were institutions, people, organizations, and all of those that were involved that led to the assassination of Chris Hani. And so it still remains a mystery, which we still continue not to believe that this was just an act of two individuals.
In so saying, then, I mean, how much more would you like to be necessarily done, even if that was to take case? So an investigation happens, perhaps, other elements are then found to have actually happened in this case. Would your call then be at that time for an extension of the sentence, the return of Janusz Walus, for example, and other perpetrators in that saga to, of course, then serve their time even further, if that was to be the case?
At the heart of it, essentially, what it really, I think the family and the party are asking for is essentially the ability to find proper closure on what are the factors, what were the schemes that were involved in that led to the assassination of Chris Hani. And so obviously, legal-wise, both Janusz Walus and Clive W. Lewis, relatively, we can say, served their term, but that has not necessarily enabled the country to get the actual true facts of what were the actual schemes that were involved in the assassination of Chris Hani. And so this entire assassination then ended up being reduced to only an act of two crazy racists, whereas we are not sure. So we need certainty around what were the broader issues that were involved. Take, for instance, we have successfully had two inquests, by the way. One of them was that of Dr. Neil Agathe, and as well as that of Timor. And so both of them have enabled the family and those that worked with them to actually find closure, but also to get a broader picture around what really happened to the killing of those activists. And so this also is important even for this one.
Considering then that you agree, though, Dr. Bhengu, with the investigation and the inquest into the assassination, having served the 28 years behind bars, as you've rightly noted, that they have served the time, it's the struggle to, I suppose, move forward then as a country. Why has this investigation perhaps not happened earlier? Why is this inquest? Why has this conversation not happened sooner and not now at a time when there is already this deportation?
By the way, if you remember, I mean, in a number of commemorations that have taken place, I think, in fact, dating back from the commemoration of 2016 and the commemoration of 2017, then the General Secretary of the Communist Party, which was Dr. Blade Nzimande, actually there was a beginning of this talk about the need for an inquest into the assassination of Comrade Chris Hani. And so it's not really a new issue. It's an issue that has been always been mentioned, particularly around the times of the commemoration. And I think obviously it gains more agency now. And I think part of the reasons why it gains agency and some kind of gravitas is both because of the moment that we are in now, in which there is almost, legally speaking, this matter of the assassination of Christian is almost coming to a close with the assassin now being deported later today and going back to his home country. And so the matter that was had, that has always remained open, that has always remained unclosed, what is happening today, almost without an inquest, means an actual closure of a chapter that actually was never truly closed. And I think secondly, like I mentioned earlier, I think the two cases for the Timol family, for the Neil Ackett family, I think also bring an impetus themselves, because we have been able to actually institute this inquest, and they have been able to be quite fruitful in actually bringing a much broader picture of what happened with those two. And so I think the two factors are critical in both giving more impetus around why the issue of the inquest is important now.
Yeah, I understand and make some relevant points then as well to the overall sentiment here. And I think it brings us back to that sensitivity test that I was speaking about just a little bit earlier, because that becomes the key proponent to all of this. How much more aid from government could come with regards to this? And I don't say that lightly. I say that with regards to understanding how much further the situation has gone already thus far. There's already been this deportation. Anything with regards to bringing Janusz Walus back, for example, would definitely be, or one would think, be a difficult scenario and situation.
It could be a difficult situation, but I think the main issue is firstly for the state. So if the South African state does institute an inquest, that then effectively begins a new process. And so that also brings the capabilities and the resources of the state to essentially be able to conduct a proper inquest into the assassination of Christiani. And that then will be able to have the kind of resources so that we can have proper investigative work, investigative research, and all under other requirements that are there for a proper inquest to actually be undertaken. And so we think that the most key issue is that the South African state essentially takes this plea by the family and by the party to essentially institute this inquest, because a formal inquest sanctioned by the state will then be able to provide the kind of space and the kind of resources that are necessary to actually be able to unearth some of the truths and some of the facts that have never come out that then are necessary for then saying what were the real factors that were behind the assassination of Christiani.
Let me ask for your opinion and how you see things faring from here. Do you believe that inquest will be followed on? Will it be concluded to the satisfaction, I suppose, then of all parties involved? And do you believe in the state's ability to continue with this inquest and reach the correct decision?
Ideally, yes. I believe that it should be. And as I mentioned earlier, we have had very successful two inquests. In fact, these two inquests are relating to cases that were almost 4 decades at least, in fact, 5 decades ago. 5 decades and 4 decades ago. And so if there was an ability to essentially be able to do the kind of investigative work for those two inquests, I do believe that an event of only 3 decades ago, there is still a lot that can be unearthed. There's still a lot of records that can be unearthed. There's still people that are alive that could be interviewed. And so I do believe that if the state accedes to the request of the family and of the Communist Party, this inquest will be even much more easily done, obviously bearing whatever then might come out of that inquest. But I think technically and in terms of possibility, because of the time frame, it looks much more possible to be able to undertake this inquest even than the ones before.
Dr. Bhengu, appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newzroom Afrika. Dr. Sithembiso Bhengu, who is the director then for the Hani Institute.